They block the border. Really? Do you know how many, and I'm sorry, I'm not mad, but I've dealt with this in the judicial review. Do you know how many land border crossings by truck or car there are in Canada to the United States?
Probably 50.
Over 100.
So you're confirming that accounts have been frozen, both personal and corporate, but you're not releasing the information. And the actual follow-up is...
Do you believe the Emergencies Act was necessary?
Not for me to answer whether we met the threshold.
Well, your opinion matters. You're Commissioner, your opinion does matter. I know how you used it. I could tell you how we used it. We know how you used it. Thank you.
Police were clear that they needed tools not held by any federal, provincial, or territorial law.
Our absolute priority is ending these illegal blockades and occupation.
Have to suspend the services they provide, namely to freeze those accounts.
There have been police witnesses who've said they saw your measures work because they heard of people getting calls back from North Battleford or whatever. Exactly. Come home, the account's frozen and I can't buy groceries.
Do not doubt our determination to act, to defend our democracy, to defend our economy, and to restore peace, order, and good government.
We have 3 major accounts that were frozen. One was the corporate account. The other one was a joint bank account with my lovely wife. And the third was Toronto Dominion personal bank account. The personal bank account with Toronto Dominion was closed for roughly 3.5 months. I had no access to funds.
I was never notified that my bank accounts had been frozen, and I was never notified that they would be, and I was never notified that they were reinstated.
But at this time, to seize, or I think even if, I would suggest even to freeze assets, the RCMP or the bank would need a court order to do that.
I don't know. I know for sure seizing, but I'm not sure about freezing.
He really came away from her testimony, combined with all of the notes and emails and text messages between her and ministers and so on, the political operatives, was that she and the hierarchy of the RCMP are political pawns. And that's not a comforting feeling.
I'm heading out on this traveler's road, and I won't find peace till the day we rest in harmony. Tell me what's so wrong if I choose to disagree. We're taking Highway 1 till we're living free. Fighting till we're living free. Oh, standing in unity.
Previously, the political executive has asked you to do certain things in investigations, such as release information that could undermine an investigation. You remember that?
You'll have to be more specific of what you're referring to.
I wouldn't want to say that Commissioner Lucki of the RCMP is powerless, but she's not calling the shots.
And the minister never asked you what your opinion was with respect to whether or not there was a Section 2 CSIS Act security threat. Is that correct?
In respect to what?
Whether or not there was a threat under Section 2 as defined in the CSIS Act, if there was a threat to the security of Canada.
No, he would have to ask CSIS.
Right.
The evidence that came out at the inquiry, including your own testimony, that she was never asked for her views.
No, they didn't. Brenda Lucki was telling them whatever. Like, so the record that they had was how they felt in Ottawa. That was their record.
Nobody from the federal government said that there was a national security threat under the definition of CSIS.
And CSIS, you're aware, told him that there wasn't.
That's what I've been told.
I don't think Brenda Lucki should be in the position that she's in. She is basically the top police officer in all of Canada. And there was nothing that I saw in her presentation and her evidence that made me feel comfortable that she is the top police officer for all of Canada.
The blanket exercise that is at our training academy and that is available for all employees of the RCMP. And it's all about, and we've reviewed our whole recruiting process to make sure there's no systemic barriers to prevent Indigenous people, but also the BIPOC community entering into the RCMP.
That said, I am of the view that we have not yet exhausted all available tools that are already available through the existing legislation. There are instances where charges could be laid under existing authorities for various criminal code offenses occurring right now in the context of the protest.
If you're the top police officer in Canada and you don't think all options were exhausted, you don't leave the room until all options are exhausted.
You said that the Emergencies Act was the safest option, that you couldn't have done what you did without it, but you didn't say it was necessary though. Is there a reason why you didn't say it was necessary?
It's not up to me to decide if it's necessary or if it meets the threshold. It's about, will it be useful to law enforcement? Is there any gaps or any problems if we were trying to enforce it?
We now have the tools to follow the money. We can see what is happening and what is being planned in real time.
You said during your testimony that you didn't know if you needed a court order to seize the bank accounts as freeze assets. Is there a reason why you weren't aware that you needed a court order to do that?
Well, the seizing, I knew that you needed a court order. I wasn't sure on the freezing because we've never done the freezing of accounts. Obviously, when we seize accounts, that's a different aspect, but the freezing was pretty new to me and I haven't looked at it any further.
Even though this is about a protest or something that folks maybe not agree about now, we can't allow precedent to be set for such a low bar for the invocation of martial law. Like, I'm sorry, the suspension of the requirements to get warrants to seize bank accounts at the executive's will or the RCMP's will or CSIS's will, but a snap of a finger and sending a letter. Sorry, I take issue with that. Whether you don't like these people, whether you like them or believe their cause or don't, as a lawyer, we have a duty to defend against that. And if it's the entire basis of it is based on malarkey, which is essentially, in my view, it was, we have to stand up and do the right thing.
Police were well equipped to take care of this with all of their existing laws and powers. So what then was the national security threat that met the extraordinarily high threshold needed to invoke this act? Is there something they're not telling us, or was the Prime Minister trying to cover up for his incompetent management of the protest, Mr.
Banks had to deal with and freeze and do what have you to any of the counts the RCMP told them to. They did that a total of 59 times to 59 different individuals. And then the banks also had a duty to act in their own accord and do things themselves without being asked. And I've been trying to figure out how many times that happened. Can't seem to get an answer from anybody.
Making of the donation, right? You make a donation under the auspices that it's going to be used for the cause, right? That's how the donation, why the donation is made. You can agree with that.
Well, I guess that would be the donor's expectation. Whether or not it happened or not is something that I can't comment on because I don't know.
And so when the government interferes with what is to be done with those funds, can you not agree that it interferes with those donors' freedom of expression? Can you agree with that?
Look, the government took a decision that these activities were illegal.
Right, and we've been having some trouble in establishing what that is, and we're going to get into that.
The banks were authorized to disclose, and somewhat compelled, to disclose private banking records to the government without request, based on their own, review. And no one has been able to tell me how many times that happened.
So how was it that the police and the government figured out whose bank account it was they were going to freeze? And shortly after the freezes, I had leaked to me from a place, I don't even know how I got it anymore, but it was the official RCMP list. And on the first number of pages, it has most of my clients listed. And there's others as well that aren't my clients and never were, and I don't even know who they are. And which illustrates something. That's how wrong they got it. They froze people's bank accounts that had nothing to do with the convoy or no real involvement in it. But what was so remarkable was when you got to the end of the first section of the list, the police officer who prepared this document put his source, his evidentiary source, and it said, it had a hyperlink in blue to CTV News, who's who in the Freedom Convoy. So that was the investigation. Some RCMP officer sat at a computer for 5 minutes, cut and pasted from CTV's website, put in the hyperlink, and so yeah, let's go freeze all these bank accounts. So once the RCMP put these people as designated persons under the Emergencies Act and sent that to financial institutions, it placed financial institutions under a positive legal duty to go through their customer lists and find Tamara Leach and Tom Marazzo and Chris Barber and Danny Bulford and Sean Thiessen and others. And if they were a customer, to immediately put holds on all of their accounts, cancel their credit cards and everything else.
So you're confirming that accounts have been frozen, both personal and corporate.
It also included insurance that's provided by insurance companies. So vehicle insurance, house insurance, commercial liability insurance, life insurance.
I believe you said that the Canadian brand internationally was thereby being associated with defiance of the rule of law.
Yes. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern speaking out as protests, seemingly inspired by unrest here in Canada, are stalling traffic in her country.
Such a shame that people now have to think carefully about whether or not they want to be carrying with pride the Canadian flag.
Normally, many people would be flying Canadian flags like this one in support of Team Canada in the Winter Games. This year, if they were to do that, they may get suspicious looks from their neighbors.
Our beautiful flag had been hijacked as their symbol of protest, and I thought that's not right.
We were also really concerned from a broader reputational perspective that our flag was being used in some of these copycat protests that were happening around the world. The flag is a symbol of our country, and it was being used, frankly, as a symbol of defiance of the law, and we were quite concerned about those reputational impacts.
Is that a sort of branding issue that Global Affairs assesses as being under deliberate attack by foreign states?
I mean, I think what we've seen in the data shows it that that democracy worldwide is in a period of retreat.
That's the stupidest thing I have ever heard to justify a national security emergency. And the fact that they say it, I think, and if people believe that, our country is now dumber than it was prior to the invocation of the act. Because if you think that the improper use of a flag could justify an emergency, people in protest burn flags. You know, in other countries, they burn effigies of actual leaders and things like that. The fact that people are being mean, okay? Being mean, right? And I get it. Like, understand, I had no skin in the game in this protest. I wasn't involved with it. I just came in after the fact. But to try and justify a national security emergency on the basis of they were misusing the flag and it's hurting our reputation. No. You saying that hurts our reputation.
Our next and final witness is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Please scroll down. The rest of this document has been redacted. So that's page 4,
page 5, page 6, page 7, page 8. So, Prime Minister, you said we should read this plan. We can't.
I'm heading out on this traveler's road, leaving all behind to revive my soul. And I won't find peace till the day we rest in harmony. They tell me I'm the one to blame, so they cast their stones and put me to shame. But damn your lies, you are a master in disguise. Tell me what's so wrong if I choose to disagree.